لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
The second question, also relating to Eid al-Adha. Are Muslim vegans committing a transgression against Allah by not performing udhiya despite having all means to do so, so not even donating it to the poor? In the process, if they are, if they are criticizing the practice and calling it as animal abuse, would that be sinful?
What about Muslim vegans who don't perform the udhiya? Not all Muslim vegans do that, right? I have vegetarians and vegans in my own family, though some are more vegetarian than others, because my one niece, I have a niece who's a pseudo-vegetarian, except if the food's really good, or if he goes to her grandmother's house, because my mother told her, listen, I cook meat. So if you come to my house, you better eat what I cook. So so the boss laid the law. So ultimately, we have to know who we are and where we come from, right? When someone dies, we say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Truly, we are Allah's, and to Him do we return, right? Life at one level is very simple. You are here because Allah created you. You remain because Allah is sustaining you. All you have in life is from Allah. Right? He is the creator, He is the Lord, He is the master. And we know as servants of Allah, what is right and wrong? Right, the right is what Allah has deemed to be right. What is wrong? What Allah has deemed to be wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks the question, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ? Does the one who created not know? Right? And we know as believers with absolute certitude that revelation is from Allah, that the Quran is revelation from Allah, it is true, it is preserved, and it is till the end of times. It is till the end of times. Some rulings of the Quran are contextual. Okay? So some rulings of the Prophet ﷺ are contextual. The Prophet ﷺ said, for example, whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let them honor their guest. Now, if you're in some Arab countries, if your guest comes, part of honoring them is to kiss, is to touch cheeks and kiss. But that's not how you'd honor your guest if they're your next door neighbor from Thailand. Because they may be freaked out by you kissing them on the cheek, right? And there are certain things that are cultural, but there are other things that are immutable. Right? And the udhiya, the ritual, firstly, the permission to eat meat is clearly established. Right? It is clearly established. It is permissible to eat meat. Right? And the command to ritually slaughter in the days of Eid al-Adha is clearly established by both Quran and Hadith. So, as a believer, we say we hear and we submit. You don't have to eat it yourself. You can donate all of it to the poor. Right? And in many parts of the world, there are a lot of poor people in the world. In any city you're living in, wherever you're living in the world, there are poor people in your neighborhood, in your community, right? For whom meat is a great luxury, for them and for their children. Right? You don't eat meat, but other people do. And you can, so this is an act of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the test of life. Do you accept Allah as your Lord? And this is what He has commanded. So you leave your preference for what Allah has commanded. That is what it means to be in a state of Islam. Aslamtu li Rabbil Alamin. I surrender to the Lord of the worlds. And that's the spirit of Sayyidina Ibrahim when he was tested to sacrifice his own child by command of Allah as a test. as a test. And if your Lord commands it, right? And it was meant to be a test, and it was mercy. Sayyidina Ibrahim submitted to the test, and instead the ritual slaughter was prescribed, right? As a reminder of what it means to submit. So we are tested in our times in a similar way. Of course, some people ask, well, how could a merciful Lord command something like this? Firstly, you have to understand that the Lord can command whatever He wills. It's His. Secondly, mercy, the implications of mercy are only fully realized in context of the hereafter. Right? Otherwise, life doesn't make sense. What about the child who was run over? What about the innocent child who died of starvation? What about the widow who drowned? What about people who have a lot of difficulties in life? There's a hereafter. Right? Everything makes sense in the context of the hereafter. Right? And mercy is fully manifest. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares about the day of resurrection, لا ظلم اليوم. There is no oppression on this day. Any oppressor and the oppressed, everything is rebalanced perfectly on that day for eternity with absolute justice and absolute mercy. So this is meant to be a test. And if someone is troubled by the fact that you're slaughtering an animal, know that there's poor people who need that. Right? If you're troubled by the fact that some animal slaughter takes place in ways that are not exactly ethical, then in many parts of there are many who slaughter, take the means to find those who slaughter ethically. Participate in it yourself. It is actually sunnah to participate in it yourself. You see the sanctity of life. And that's why there's a ritual slaughter, that life is a precious thing, that we take even the taking of an animal life as something inviolable, and there's a right way of doing that. So practice ethical slaughtering or support ethical slaughtering. We have such initiatives here in Canada, such as Blossom Pure. Right? Not just organic meat, but also ethical meat. You may pay a little more. And there's many very good Muslim charities operating across the Muslim world that both take care that they slaughter according to the sunnah. When the Prophet said, Allah loves excellence in all things. So if you slaughter, do so with excellence. Put the animal to rest. Right? Comfort the animal. And make sure the knife is sharp. You're not supposed to slaughter in the presence of other animals. That's against the sunnah. The other animals should not see an animal being slaughtered. Right? You put the animal at rest. You don't show the blade before you slaughter the animal. Right? The animal is best, they say it should be lying down, facing the qibla with the sharp knife that the animal hasn't seen, and in one motion, you slaughter the animal. Right? And this is a point of reflection for the one slaughtering, which is why it is from the sunnah even for women to witness the slaughter, because it gives us a point of reflection on the sanctity and preciousness of life. Right? And to make us commit to value the sanctity of life and to be grateful for the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, we are, as believers, we should be troubled we have to be troubled. It's a communal obligation, a fard kifaya, that as a Muslim community, we oppose the ill treatment of animals in mass production systems, in the wrong ways of slaughtering animals, and we should raise the bar in terms of that. So if you are troubled by that, seek out those who do it properly. Right? If you're going to marry, you don't just walk by the first man or woman and say, "Hey, will you marry me?" Sure. Right? If you buy a house, you don't just say, "Oh, that house is for sale, let me just buy it." You take your time to find out. This is a religious duty. You want to do it properly. You don't just say, okay, so-and-so slaughters. You're troubled. Take the steps. And this is an expression of your concern. To do so according to those standards of concern. And those are, there's no one more ethical that can be imagined than the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No one is more merciful than the most merciful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you have ethical concerns, you feel mercy, no one is, Allah is the merciful. There's no one in creation more merciful than the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So see how you can embrace that mercy from the Lord of mercy, from the example of the Messenger of mercy sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? But we leave our preferences for the guidance of Allah and His Messenger, while upholding the highest standard of justice and mercy and excellence and virtue, because that's what Allah and His Messenger call to. Inna Allah ya'mur bil adli wal ihsan. Allah commands only to justice and excellence. Anything that is not according to the standards of justice, you're not understanding it soundly. And the implementation of religious teachings that is not characteristic of the highest potentials of ihsan is falling short of that potential. So keep that in mind, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.